There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Now, do you know how it feels to be in a class that speaks a language that you don't understand, or in a class where students speak two languages that you have been learning simultaneously since you were very young? Of course, your reading performance will be different in each situation. Well, I study language and literacy development in bilingual children whose first language is considered a minority language. My focus is on bilingual Arabic English speakers, whether immigrants or refugees. Now, let's start our workshop with some meditation towards healthy minds and fresh thoughts. Um, how do you play this? Diana, how do you work this out?
Deb, if you're okay, I can share it if yours isn't working.
Yeah, I don't seems to have the link connected to it.
No worries. So for everyone watching, we just want to do a really quick, it's like a 1 minute meditation because we know you've been on meetings all day. So we just want to do a quick reset. Um,
Hi, and welcome to
could everyone hear that? Okay.
Headspace. So, no matter what's going on in your life right now, no matter how many thoughts are racing around your mind, no matter how the body's feeling, just take a moment to sit down and take a big, deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, a sense of taking in fresh air, the lungs expanding. As you breathe out, a sense of letting go of any stress in the body and the mind. Just feeling the muscles soften and relax. And close your eyes if you'd like to. One more. Breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just take a moment to pause. Allow the thoughts to come and go. And then just gently opening the eyes again.
Okay, so thank you for indulging us with our quick meditation. Radab, do you want to start sharing or do you want me to just flip through for you?
Yeah, that's fine. I can raise my hand whenever you want to change.
Sure.
So, in our workshop, we are going to cover topics that are useful to support multilingual children with reading and reflect on the importance of their overall well being for a successful learning process. Now, Canada is a leading country in welcoming immigrants and resettling refugees. However, how can we look at them similarly or differently in terms of their context? Immigrants moved to Canada voluntarily and armed with education and secured savings. Refugees were forced to leave their countries, moved to Canada fleeing war and looking for a better life. Many of these refugee children arrived to Canada as families with young children, and many of those children have been distressed with traumatic experiences, and many have interrupted education prior to their arrival to Canadian schools. How are they similar? We can look at them that they are both facing the same language learning challenge. First, they need to obtain their first language to foster a sense of unity and community, belonging for their families and community members. Also, they need to learn the official language of Canada, whether English or French, that is foundational for their academic success and social integration. Therefore, word reading is the first block of learning to read and foundational for school success. It's not a straightforward process, it's a gradual learning process that requires knowledge of sounds, connecting sounds together, and then translating sounds into spoken words. To be able to read words, a child must learn philological awareness as a first step. It's the awareness of the internal structure of a word, and it typically develops gradually from larger to smaller sounds units. That is, syllable, onset rhyme, and phoneme levels. Christina will reflect on in depth on these, these distinctions. Okay. Now, to better understand phonological awareness, we need to differentiate between phonemes, graphemes, and letters. Let's look at the word burger here. Phonemes are mental representations of speech sounds that are made by the mouth. So I know that the p sound is bilabial and the th is interdental just by looking at how you pronounce it by your mouth. And this is called phonemic awareness. Graphemes are individual letters and groups of letters that represent single phonemes. For example, I have the s in spoon and the o in the same word. And those here, the child needs to recognize individual letters, consonant clusters, and vowels too. Finally, we look at letters that are visual building blocks of written words. When we say the letters in a word, as in spoon, we are describing the way that this word looks. However, some words that are irregular are very challenging for some children. For example, the word who or ocean. Okay, so Diana, you froze. I
I'm
don't see.
frozen?
Yeah, you were frozen for a second, but I don't see my slide.
Oh, it's on
Slide
phonics
8.
versus sight words?
Yeah, slide 8. I don't see it. I see the first slide.
Oh, Jermaine, do you also see the first slide?
Sorry, I actually see teaching phonics words and sight words.
No.
So Radab, they can all see it. So I think you can
Yeah.
probably go forward.
Oh, teaching phonics words and sight words. Okay, now
Yeah.
I can control my screen, by the way.
Oh, do you want me to let you screen share?
No, that's fine. This is good. Okay, but now okay. So therefore, when we teach children how to read words, it's important to make a distinction between phonics words and sight words. Phonics are recommended as the first strategy that children should be taught to help them learn how to read. These words teach children how to listen carefully and to identify the phonemes that make up each word. This helps children to learn how to read words and to spell out the words using the corresponding graphemes, and we call it grapheme phoneme correspondence. And we can see that also phonics words are should be taught implicitly through story time and independent reading. On the other hand, sight words are words that are recognized by sight. Beginning readers, they spend a great deal of time and energy on learning sight words, and those are known as high frequency words. And those should be taught explicitly through reading bee and, practice makes perfect. Okay. Now, the best way to teach children phonics words is through flashcards. We can integrate rhyming words activity or even homophones rhyming activities. Sight words, on the contrary, they are taught through also flashcards. However, they are taught like they need a lot of practice. There is no way to learn them unless the kids start, repeating them. This gives them, enhances their learning, encourages them to do best, and provides them with a self-confidence when they initiate reading. Okay, so each language has a unique syntactic structure in terms of the number of letters, sound combinations, sentence structure, subject-verb agreement. It is easier for a child to learn English if the first language is similar to the structure of English language. For example, we're talking about French, and this is called positive transfer. As you can see in the example in front of you, we have at the top 3 sentences, one in English and one in French and one in Arabic. We can see that, for example, between English and French, they have similar alphabets, they have similar sentence structure in terms of subject, verb, object, and it's read from left to right. When we look at the last sentence, for example, the Arabic language, we have some similar alphabets except for difficult sounds like the kha, the ha, the, and ta. And also the sentence structure is different. We have the verb, subject, object. And also it's read from right to left. And it's an allographic language, which means that we connect some letters together to form words. Yeah. And I move it to Christina.
Christina, you're muted.
Perfect. Everyone can see my slides? So as mentioned, we spoke a little bit about phonological awareness. So today we're going to briefly discuss early identification of at-risk readers and early intervention. There are more than 10 million children who struggle with reading. English language learners and multilingual learners cannot develop phonological awareness in English until they're familiar with the sound patterns of English. This means that before explicit instruction in phonological awareness begins, children should have extensive experiences with fun and appealing songs, poems, chants, and read out louds that will allow them to hear and reproduce the sound patterns of English. The number one red flag for at-risk readers is poor phonological awareness skills, such as phonemic awareness. Educators need more resources and strategies to support students who are struggling to read in French immersion programs. Here's an example. So phonological awareness is basically a broad skill that includes identifying and manipulating units of oral language. The first skills to teach are segmenting and blending. Here we have an example in English, French, and Arabic. So in English, we have 44 phonemes, and in French, we have 37 phonemes. This activity can be done by clapping the sounds. So for instance, in farm, we have 3 phonemes. Fa, ar, farm. So segmenting and then blending follows. Same thing for French. On a le mot ferme. 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 So the child will understand that there are 3 sounds in the word farm. Jermaine will show you in Arabic.
Okay, so mazra'a. So these are 3 in Arabic. Even duck, batta, and fish is samaka.
So as we can see, phonemes are not necessarily parallel within languages. So some languages, like the word duck, where in English we only have 3 phonemes, and in French, canard, it actually has 4 phonemes. So that's important to teach the children how to break down the sounds in a word. The skills that we first teach, as another very common example, is the word cat. Ka-at is cat. Or you can show them the opposite, where you ask them to break down the word. Cat. And then you would ask them to say ka-at. However, on the other hand, when moving to teach syllables, cat is only 1 syllable. A syllable is a part of a word with only 1 vowel sound. For instance, in the word bilingual, bilingual has 4 syllables. English language learners must learn to blend, delete, and manipulate phonemes to be successful readers. Teachers can expose children to individual sounds and to teach them that they can combine them into words. So how can we support those who are struggling, students who may be at risk for reading failure? To support these students, it's important to identify them as soon as possible and to intervene immediately. Teachers can provide early identification by assessing children's early reading skills. We will later discuss short and effective phonological awareness assessments and activities to support at-risk readers. It is key to start working with struggling readers as soon as possible. As little as 15 minutes a day can fix some of the major literacy difficulties by the end of the school year. Now, why implement early identification and interventions? This is important, especially with children who have parents with low literacy skills. So children of parents with low literacy skills have a 72% chance of being at the lowest reading levels themselves. They're also more likely to get poor grades, display behavioral problems, have high absentee rates, repeat school years, or even drop out. The Matthew effect shows us that children, as they get older, the gap widens between poor readers and good readers. Failing to learn to read before the third or the fourth year of schooling may be indicative of lifelong problems in learning new skills. Therefore, detecting problems early avoids more severe problems later. Let's teach explicitly to help readers one-on-one in small groups to hear and reproduce English sounds accurately. Point out to different letter combinations that have the same sound and provide extra practice with them. Teach words that readers know the meaning. When you teach words that students do not know, this reinforces the idea that reading is pronouncing sounds out loud rather than creating meaning. English language learners and multilingual learners should get lots of practice. Here's an example of a very popular high frequency sound that is often spelled in many different ways. The sound sh. So as in the word ash is spelled as sh. In lotion, it's spelled as ti. Passion, it's double si. Pension, it's one s and a a. Facial, ci. Chef, ch. Mustache, che. Ocean, ce. Sugar, s. Appreciate, ci. Initiate, ti. Conscious, sci. Tissue, double s. And cushion, back to our, well, it's shi in this way. So as you can see, these may be very confusing. However, it's really important to teach English language learners that the same sound could be represented in many different ways in English. So now we're going to move on and we're just going to show you a few activities and assessments that you can do really quickly as teachers with your students. So the first one I have here is to help students identify rhyme awareness. And the way you would know if they were struggling is you would administer these easily 5 different examples. So for instance, you would ask them, does man rhyme with pan? So they would have to say yes, and it would go for ball and call, book and head. If they told you book and head rhymed, then clearly you would realize there would be a deficit and there would be an issue, and you would then intervene. So an example of an activity that you can do to practice with the child. So this one here, it's different images, and you would ask the child to match the sounds of the words the images represent. So for instance, box and fox. The child would have to be able to identify, does this rhyme? If they say yes, they're correct. If they say no, it'll be really important to practice articulation and practice the repetition of the sounds so they can be familiar. Then your next example is bug and dog. Bug and dog don't rhyme. So it's important you show them and explain to them why they don't rhyme if they do think they rhyme. So you would explain that the b sound is different than the d in the d sound in dog, which is also very, very confusing sometimes for English language learners of Spanish, where these letters are often used and sound the same. The next important step would be initial sound expression. So here, again, something you can do orally, very simple to administer. You would just ask the child, what is the initial sound in sun? So what is the first sound you hear? So for sun, they would have to tell you s. Next easy word would be mommy. Can you tell us the first sound in the word mommy? And they would say, And it's really important that they understand that you're asking them for the sound and not the letter. If you realize that they have a deficit, in this case, there's different activities you can do. This one here, it's basically you just take pictures and then you can sort them. And then you would ask them, please tell me the name of the picture. They would tell you camera. Ask them, what is the first sound you hear in the word camera? And then they would have to say ka. The next one would be dinosaur. Can you tell us the initial sound in dinosaur? The. And then you would continue that way. Our last activity here is for syllables. So when you jump from phonemes to syllables, it gets a little bit more confusing because, as we mentioned, the word cat has 3 phonemes, but it's only 1 syllable. So for instance, your first example is pizza. So the child needs to understand that pizza has 2 syllables, and it's also important to ask them how they divide it. So P and Z, so they know where the separation is. Our next word we have is watermelon. Watermelon has 4 syllables. So again, it's really important that the child understands where the breakdown is. Watermelon. Because sometimes you'll notice children who don't understand syllable segmentation, they'll just put lines all over the place. And it'll be very obvious to you when that happens. And then you would obviously do an activity with them. So here's an example. So this is one that's really popular with children. So you would show them an image, you would break it down, and you would ask them how many syllables in harmonica. So you can have them break it down by written, or you can also have them clap it out. So a lot of children, since you're practicing oral language skills, it's really nice for them to just do it in a circle or do it with their friends in pairs. So one friend would have like the cards on the table, and they would flip the card, and then the other child would tell them how many syllables by clapping out. Har, ma, I, ka. And what's fun is that all these activities can also be done in other languages. So if everyone has access to the OneDrive link that my colleague Diana put in our chat, I would like us just to do an activity together. So your worksheet is called the syllable activity. So I'm not sure if it's better if people are able to discuss with us, Diana, or is it better to put them in a breakout room?
It's up to other people. I'm also aware we don't have a ton of time left, so it might just be better to do a group discussion. It's up to you though.
Okay, perfect. Not to worry. So I'll just go over the worksheet really quickly so we don't run out of time. So the first word that we have here is where the child needs to break down the number of syllables in the picture. So what's fun is that the child can do this individually by themselves, where they can look at the image, say the word. So for instance, they say shoe. Shoe has 1 syllable, and then they can mark 1 on the sheet of paper. They can also do this in pairs, where you can have children work together with peers, and they can kind of like play a game. So one person would show the image, and the other person would say the amount of syllables. Or you can also do it as a whole classroom activity where you can play like bingo. So then you could say the word, and the child has to find the word and the number of syllables. Or you can say, find words with 4 syllables. So then they would be able to put and cross out a sticker or put an X on the word watermelon because it has 4 stickers, as well as helicopter, harmonica, and tarantula, and caterpillar. So this is something that children really enjoy, and it also helps you as a teacher know who is able to break down syllables and who's not. So I hope that was very helpful, and we better understand the importance of early identification. And now I'm going to let my colleagues Diana and Jermaine talk to you about the connection between language and mental health.
Perfect.
Jermaine, do you want to share your screen? Do you want me to do mine?
Do yours, please, just because
Okay.
we're going to switch it up. Perfect. So as Christina mentioned that Diana and I will be talking about language development and mental health and the impact that they both have on each other. We will talk about what multilingual learners with well-being concerns, and we will have some suggestions and activities throughout the section. So just to start off, it is very important to talk about what heritage language is, and just a quick definition. It's basically the first language acquired by the child. Now, for the case of many immigrant students in Canada, the students' heritage language is completely different from the dominant language used in their education system. Yet research and interventions provide evidence and highly advise teachers to include students' heritage language in the classroom. This is basically because when students learn about their culture, their language, traditions, and their families, they tend to value and feel positive about their ethnic identities, and hence display higher self-esteem. As well, from incorporating the heritage language in the classroom, teachers get to know their students, the students themselves get to know each other, and that is critical in supporting the anti-bias and aligning with culturally responsive teaching or pedagogy, as you're both bringing and highlighting the culture of your students in the classroom. Now, there are various methods where we can include the heritage language in the classroom. We will just mention 3 for sake of time. First one we included here is specifically an art activity for if students don't have the fluent language yet to express or describe their culture. So here basically it says to draw a portrait of your family celebrating your favorite holiday, include traditional clothing, food, activities, and decorations. A second way is to, oh, sorry, can you go with this? Thank you. Oh, so a second way is to include providing bilingual dictionaries or having students create their own cue cards. So as Ridal before mentioned, cue cards is a great way where you could just have one language on one side and the other language on the opposite side. A third great way is having a book area in the classroom with various languages where students can do some independent reading. But yeah, for now, I'll just mention 3. And so another thing to keep in mind is while supporting the heritage language in the classroom, teachers are also recommended to encourage additive bilingualism. What this means is basically is that there's this stigma where if you're learning one language, your skills in the other language declines. But in fact, in research, skills in one language leverage learning a second language, and that's known as cross-language transfer. So that is another point to have parents as well aware of. Okay, now another aspect that impacts besides the heritage language and the second language on the well-being of students is whether the children or youth they experienced adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. Now, ACEs are considered traumatic events that occur until the age of 17, and they can include witnessing or experiencing violence, abuse, war, or being in a household with mental health problems, substance misuse, basically any kind of event that leads the child to feel unstable or unsafe. Now, typically complex trauma is experiencing 4 ACEs, and you can tend to find this specifically within the refugee students. And Diana's going to take it on from here to explain how behavior does affect.
Yeah, so thank you for sticking with us, everyone. I'm aware we've been listening for a while. So just to give you some background, I'm a French immersion and special education teacher. So I see a lot the intersection between language and mental health. One of the things we see a lot in refugee students, and Jermaine can speak to this too, is that being unable to speak their emotions in the classroom is highly frustrating for kids. So not only are they feeling sad, upset, mistrustful, something they're feeling that's upsetting them, not being able to express it can then lead to behavior because they're so frustrated that no one understands them. So it's really important to give students outlets in the classroom while they're developing language. So a good example we've done, and this is good also for mindfulness, is drawing the part of your body that's affected by the emotions. So if they're feeling afraid, how do they experience fear? Does their heart start beating fast? Do their palms get clammy? Does their throat feel weird? Do their feet get cold? There are lots of different symptoms that will happen depending on their emotion, and helping them to identify them can also give them the tools to recognize, oh, I heard a loud noise. Loud noises are a trigger for me. I'm feeling fear. So we want to give students the vocabulary to be able to discuss their language. I don't know, Jermaine, if you want to add anything to that. Okay. So building on this, so that drawing example was great. Another one that we love to do is emotion charades. And this is great because it is a language related activity. But it also gives them a way to express those emotions in a healthy way. So we're just going to show you a quick video. It's only a minute, but we wanted to model it for you.
Emotional
Can you hear that?
Yeah, we're good.
charades is a great game to play with your kids to help nurture their social, emotional development. Kids can pull out of a hat a picture of a face making a certain expression, or the word itself, frustrated, angry, tired, excited. Once they take the card, they have to keep it a secret, not show anybody else watching, and they get to enter the space and act that emotion out. They may need to really go farther than they even would normally do in real life in order for everybody to guess and understand what they're portraying. That ability to learn new words to express what they're feeling and to actually fully inhabit a feeling is a great way to develop kids' social emotional skills. I love any game that helps kids go deeper into feelings and through play allows them to express themselves. You can make it into an art project where kids actually draw out their own feelings or different feelings and emotions on little pieces of paper, which then they pull. We've also used these wonderful cards from Dr. Michelle Borba, and we've attached the link below. Have fun playing emotion charades, expressing.
Okay, so we just wanted to give you a quick example, and I also want to mention for our IS teachers, because I know we said this is for both levels, you can do this in different ways. So it can be you're reading a book together and you can say, after reading this book, act out how you felt if they're having trouble with the writing, and then eventually you move it into a writing exercise. So you start in the scaffolding we talk about, you start with drawing, you move into charades, which is oral language, you then move into reading. So there's a lot of ways to adapt this for older kids as well. It's not just a game for younger kids. Obviously, you have to make sure it's developmentally appropriate and that they're going to be engaged. So there are lots of ways to adapt it that way. The last thing we want to go over quickly today is something that you kind of learn with experience in the classroom, and that's that all behavior is communication. There is no child who is acting out just to make your day awful. I know it feels like that a lot of the time. It's never the case. That behavior is always coming from a need that's going unrecognized. And not to say that's ever the teacher's fault, but it's a lack of communication. So the child's unable to say that they didn't get breakfast and they're hungry, or that a child was bullying them in the playground and they don't feel safe, that they don't have a safe adult in their life and they're not sure who to tell that they're not feeling well. There's a lot of different things that go into that. Sometimes they're not even aware if they don't have this self-regulation to sit themselves down and say, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? So we want to talk you through some strategies for dealing with behavior, especially as it relates to refugees. So a few things that we want to go over. So a good example you'll see a lot is silent reading, and there are some kids who are poking their friends, making jokes, just being silly in general. A lot of times that's about anxiety to read, that they're so anxious that they're not able to read what everyone else is reading. They're redirecting that into behavior outside. So some ways you can get around that is you can make sure they're at the right reading level, adjust what they're reading if you need to. You can do reading buddies, so have them read with a friend who you think will be good for them and help them if they have trouble. You can do things like when I was teaching locally developed English, we did a lot of comic books because the pictures would help them. So there's a lot of different formats you can play with there. Running around during literacy stations. So if you're trying to do a bunch of different stations and they're running around, they might just be kinesthetic and they need more hands-on. So look if you can incorporate clay to have them shape out the letters, anything like that, that would help them feel a little more engaged. Not handing in writing work. We'll see this a lot with kids who don't hand in their homework when they were supposed to write something, and we think, oh, they just didn't want to do it. A lot of times it's that they couldn't and they're too ashamed to say so. So if you make it a safe space for them to say, oh, you know what, I really didn't get the homework, then we can help them to do it. So it's talking to them about why it didn't happen instead of assuming that it was a behavioral problem. So there's a couple other examples here you can look through. If they're being silly while they're reading, so instead of reading the word, they're making up words or they're making funny noises. Sometimes that's because they can't figure out the word, so they just cover it up. You know, we see that a lot. The typical class clowns are usually kids who are trying to cover up some kind of feeling of anxiety. Teasing other kids about making mistakes is usually a projection issue. So they're insecure about their reading, so they feel like they need to tease other kids so that nobody notices them. So this all goes into the more you make your classroom a safe space, the less of that behavior you're going to see. The more you normalize reading being difficult, the more that you make mistakes, maybe to make it feel normal. And getting up constantly, looking around, fidgeting. We see a lot of ADHD behavior come out in reading. So it's really important to pay attention, and that if you see any of these attentional issues, that they're addressed early. Radab, who is our lovely first speaker, has done some studies with refugees and found that ADHD is a huge problem that affects refugee student reading. And partially because they've had so much interrupted education, there's a lot of mental health. It's a very complex issue, but we are seeing a lot of attentional difficulties. So if you see any of those, the faster we can get them on an attention-based IEP, the better it will be in the long run. So yeah, just a quick note that a lot of times reading difficulties don't always come from reading. Sometimes they come from other things, such as emotional dysregulation and inability to pay attention, things like that. We have a few big ideas. I don't want to go too much into them because I want to leave some time for discussion. I just have listed a few here that you could do. So the film Inside Out, the best movie ever invented. I love it for teaching emotions. It's great with kids. You can build it into a whole unit where they're making their own stories, creating characters, and you can do this in high school. I've done things like this in high school, but maybe with comic books, things like that. Create safe ways for students to check into you. Make yourself the safe adult in their lives. That can help a lot. Teach them emotional first aid. That's becoming really popular. So instead of saying to kids, oh, if you get a cut, here's a Band-Aid, say, oh, if a friend is crying, give them a hug and tell a teacher. So you can build that into your procedural writing classes. Use narratives as mental health. So if they have trouble expressing their emotions, have them say, oh, if it was a character who went through this experience, how would you write it? And as always, inquiry-based learning and universal design are amazing for kids who are having any of these issues because it allows them to take on their own learning and approach it in the way that works best for them. So we have some take-home messages. Perhaps we'll let you look through that on your own time because we want to leave some time for questions. And I'll leave up our contact slide. So if you want to get in touch with any of us, we've left our emails, our website, our Twitter, and in the chat, we did put all these slides. So if you want to go back in, you're welcome to do that. And there is, oh, sorry, Radab.
Yeah, talking about the newsletter, that they can also have like a brief description.
Yes. And I think with the last 5 minutes, we'd like to open it up to questions if people have them, discussions, points you've noticed in your own classrooms if you've started practicum. Any questions? You can also type them in the chat. Okay, well, I'm going to put your feedback link in the chat because we do need you to complete that. Oh, we did get a question.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great point. So thank you so much. Who was it that said that? I think it was Robin.
Robin.
Yeah, it is really tough. And I think the other part of behavior is reminding ourselves that it's okay to get frustrated. Nobody's perfect. As a special education teacher, I see that all the time where I have to remind myself, oh, I'm getting frustrated. Why am I getting frustrated? It's because I can't figure out what's happening for this child, and it makes me feel like I'm not helping them enough. So even doing those check-ins on yourself is important because we're not perfect and it's a continual learning process. But yeah, it is tough. It's tough working with a lot of these issues, and we're here if you need any support, if there's anything we can help you with. I'm going to post, I've put the feedback link in the chat too. If you guys could all fill that out, I think it's helpful for the organizers to know. Any other final questions? Well, thank you so much for coming. That link we posted in the chat initially is to that OneDrive, so you can download our slides, you can download all of the handouts. We would recommend that you do that. And please reach out to us if you have any questions. We're more than happy to talk about any issues that you're running into. Christina, Jermaine, Radab, do you have any?
Yeah, that we have like some suggested readings that they can also look at if they would like to read more about some of the important topics that we covered today. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for participating.
Yeah, and we'll stick around for a few minutes in case anyone has any final questions. Thank you,
we
everyone, for
understand
coming.
how you can.
Oh, sorry, Christina.
I was just going to add that we understand that obviously talking in a group can be a bit anxiety provoking, but we definitely have a lot of experience and like great resources as bilinguals and even multilinguals ourselves. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We have a lot of resources that can also help you as a student and not only for your future students.